Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Poets of the East. To me, the East is every place there's a poet, that's a sunrise. That is the rebirth of light, and poets exist to tell us their truth, whatever it is. However it is, they shine on our literary world. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Lee Eric Freedman, a poet of some importance, a poet of note, who's not only a poet, but a producer who brings other poets together and makes a space for poets to share their insight. And I think that is a very, very special gift. And I thank you for that work that you do, Lee Eric.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me on today, Richard. I'm honored, and this is going to be good. I don't often get to share a lot of my work on Zoom. I'm usually at the other end, making sure that the show is running smooth. So,
believe me, I know how it is. I spent about 20 years in production, whether it was live concerts or performance, and I spent a lot of time backstage. And to me, in a way, one of the best parts of any show is what happens on the headsets, what happens backstage.
Yeah.
Because you get a special insight there. So let me ask you my first of a series of questions. I first asked my poets, when did you start writing?
So I had a feeling you were going to ask this, so I had to go back and look. I started writing around, I want to say the winter of 1987. I was in college and I was home for break, and a friend of mine, his name is Alan, he played me and at that point I was involved with my school's radio station, and I was heavily into music, which is a big influence on my poetry. But so Alan had played me this cassette tape that him and another friend of his made. They were jamming in the other guy's basement, and it was some punk rock song or something that was, pretty deplorable. Alan does not remember this, so and he probably will deny it, even though I haven't seen him for a few years. But I heard this, and I didn't think much of it. But when I got back to school a couple days later, I thought maybe I could write them a song, because they're going to be some famous band, but they never got beyond the cellar. So I sat down and I wrote something, and it was a ripoff of Robert Frost's "The Road Not Taken," and a song by an Australian new wave band that was popular at the time called Real Life. And I thought it was the best thing ever, and and then I kept looking at it. I'm like, this really isn't a song. It's more poetic. And, I thought I was going to be, and I thought maybe I could do more of this. And I thought I was going to be the best, the most amazing poet on the planet. And I just kept doing it, and I didn't really have any formal training. We had to remember the closest that I came to was we had to memorize Robert Frost "Stopping by Woods" when I was in fourth grade, which is the only poem that I know by heart, except one of my own, which is a real short one. And I just kept doing it. And and then I started reading more poets and, learning about poetry. And it probably was in maybe 1989, 90, when I had transferred out of there from one school. I had transferred to Salem State College. And that's when I started reading my stuff I learned about open mics and things like that, and that's probably where I read my for the first time ever. And it just snowballed, and I just kept doing it, and here I am.
Good for you. Okay, the next question I have to ask is, obviously, you were influenced strongly by music, as was I.
Yeah.
What authors, what writers, what lyricists made a big impression on you early on when in your writing?
Robert Frost, definitely, I think, even though I don't really do a lot of rhyming, but just his vividness, his imagery, things like that. For music, probably Lou Reed and Nick Cave from Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds and the Birthday Party. And then just everything else I absorbed. I'm really into goth music and a lot of that, darkness and stuff like that, I think influenced me. And then later on, as I really got into the music, a lot of experimental stuff without lyrics, things like that, interested me. And I think it's just an amalgamation of everything. I mean, I've written poems at concerts. I've run over to the bar and grabbed a napkin, and written stuff down, things like that. So, people ask me what my favorite poet is, and I don't know.
I won't
it's a
ask that.
difficult.
I won't ask that.
It's a difficult question, I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'll ask you this version of that question. When you started thinking of yourself as a serious writer, as a person who really embraced writing as an art form, were there any authors that you looked at and looked to for insight into your writing?
Um, probably not. I really wasn't reading a lot of poetry, and I just was kind of going with my gut. And I got to go back to Frost, but eventually, I discovered Hart Crane. I didn't. I he was in a. When I took a an American literature class at in one of my in college, and we did a segment on poetry. And Hart Crane was in the book we had, but we didn't read any of his stuff. There just wasn't enough time, and I don't think he was and I don't think he's really well known. Maybe now, but I was intrigued by what I read, even though I couldn't for the life of me understand it. And then somebody gave me a gift certificate to Barnes and Noble, and I saw his complete poems, and I decided, I'm going to get this. And I started to read it. Couldn't, very out there, very imagery. Guy was a genius. So I put it down. I went back. I read his biography. Then I went back and I read all his published letters, which I don't recommend. If you want to know a poet, I don't know. To me, the letters can be very difficult and very dry, but I read them. I stuck to it and I read them. And I went back and then I read his poetry. And he is very difficult. A modernist, killed himself in 1932. He did win, I forget what prize, but which he ended up in Mexico. Went to France, but was a little late, kind of missed, the peak of all the French Americans in France. But he's just, I think he's very underrated, and I don't think a lot of people read him. Even poets, I don't think read him. But he draws from a lot of classical Greek stuff, and there's a lot of imagery in his stuff. And I think if you don't read his biography first, if you try to sit down and read his stuff, it just a lot of it will just go over your head. And that's the way I think with a lot of the modernist poets, and even a lot of poets from the early 20th century, Eliot, things like that.
Okay, let me ask you this. When did you start performing poetry?
Probably around 1990 when I transferred to Salem State College, and I joined their radio station as well. And a number of the other DJs were writing poetry, and I found out about an open mic, and I went to it and I read, and I think it was about 1989, 90, somewhere around there, and that was the first time I read, and I really got a kick out of it, and people clapping, and I'm like, wow, people are listening to my stuff, and I didn't think it was that great, I mean, it was what it was. I think I was still in the beginning of my my process to get where I am. And but I just kept doing it. And then I met a few other people, and I met a guy, and he was starting an open mic in Salem at a bar, and that was a monthly thing, and I just started going to that, and that's where I started, bonding with the community, and creating all these connections, and to me that is an important thing,
Oh
is
yeah.
the connections, the local connections, and since the pandemic, the global connections that we've all made, and just listening to other people's poetry and the way they read and the way they perform. And I think that was a big influence on me as well.
Were there teachers that influenced you either in a positive or negative way?
Yeah. I didn't read much poetry in high school or in elementary school, but I got to give a shout out to my elementary school library teacher or librarian, Miss Phillips. I don't know her first name, never knew what her first name was. Don't even know what ever happened to her, but she saw this potential in me as a really good reader of, just books, not
Yeah.
poetry, but she really pushed me to become an avid reader. And instead of reading like the storybooks, she pushed me to like the older kids novels and things. And then in middle school and junior high, Miss Story, believe it or not, her name was Story, she was my English teacher, and she got me into do some creative writing, things like that. And I think that's where I also we had to read Jack London, um, The Cremation of Sam McGee. That
Ah,
sticks out. I always forget this, but yeah, that was a good poem. After we read, I think it was it White Fang, or what was the story that
right, right, right.
London wrote? Yeah. And after that, we could do some other projects, and I remember reading that, and that's a hoot. That really is. And then I'm also remembering Robert Service. We
Mhm.
had to read the In Flanders Fields,
Yeah, the
and I
puppy
think it was
show.
elementary school. I don't remember. So
Yeah.
this stuff probably stuck with me, even though I didn't absorb it, but subconsciously. So, and I thought all poetry had to rhyme like everybody else did, but it doesn't, and that's what I
Yeah.
learned. So,
Okay, are there topics or themes that you find yourself addressing pretty regularly?
I, I don't, I do have a lot of, I do have political pieces and newsy pieces, but I don't try to write that. Um, Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And to me, I find out like they become dated, a lot of them. Like if I read something, it's a little dated, you can still get away with it. But so I try not to be too political, but I don't censor myself. I will write whatever comes to mind. If I get an idea on about something, I'll write about it, and I'll work on it, and I'll workshop it as well. So, but
One
it
of the,
doesn't necessarily have to be, of the moment. I mean,
right.
the pandemic produced some poetry, but not a lot. Um, our former president, whose name I won't mention, I produced a few things related to that, but not every single day, you know. So
One of the other questions I like to ask is, you find poets who, should we say, have a daily or a weekly practice. They no matter what, they write every day or every week. And there are
yeah,
other poets who wait for inspiration to sort of nudge them along. How do you fall in that spectrum?
I think that I tend to wait. Um, if I try to sit down, if I plan, I'm going to sit down and write today, I can't do it, And and I got to tell you, since February, I really haven't written a lot. Um, and and I go through a lot of these periods where I can't write, or I start to write something and it's lousy. So a lot of times I'll go back and I'll look at older poems and I'll, work on rewrite them or edit them or, or retype them to look better on the page, things like that until I do that. But unless I'm thrown into maybe a workshop situation, which I've done a number of those, I try. I can't sit down every day and do it because it just won't come to me. So
Okay. Now, this is a little serious question.
okay,
Do you feel that poets or authors in general have a responsibility to address contemporary societal issues?
yes, I do. Um, I may not necessarily address them all the time, but there are some people that can do that, and they're great at it. They're of the moment. I got to throw a shout out to my friend Mark Lippman. Great activist poet. Definitely, on the ball when it comes to things of the moment. But I think all poem, I think everybody needs to do that. And I've done it. I can't do it every single day. You know, if you give me a topic, maybe something that happened yesterday, I might be able to within a few days. I've written things topical, maybe like about a month or two later. Are they dated? Maybe. But, if the inspiration strikes, then I'll have to write about it. I told myself a number of years ago that I would never censor myself. And no matter how bad the poem is that I write, I will still write it down. And I run a workshop group, and I got to plug them, the Tin Box Poets of Swampscott. And we meet every month. We've been meeting since the late to mid to late 90s. And it's just a great group of people. It's very casual. We gently critique each other's work, and I've become such a better poet as a result of those people. And they're some great friends. And I've gone to them with stuff that I've written, about a topic that happened a month ago, and I've written it 6 months later, and they've helped me work it out, and and it's great, and it's become a better piece because of it. So, in answer to your question, yes, poets and writers need to address what's going on, especially in today's world where it's just so absolutely crazy every week with weirdness.
Yeah, I just heard a news story that I really have to share with you in this context. I
Okay.
understand that the Republican candidate, who shall remain nameless, just suggested to a Christian group that if they vote for him this time, they'll never have to vote again.
Oh, I did see that this afternoon
I
earlier.
think that's the most curious position to take.
Yeah.
The ramifications of it seem to leave some very, very negative connotations in my mind.
Yeah. And there's definitely a poem in there. Will I
Wow.
write one? Maybe. You got me. As soon you just mentioned it, and I had read it earlier, so you got the gears grinding a bit. So this may
Okay.
be
My
the
last question, sir, and I thank you so much for sharing your time.
Oh,
The
you're
last
welcome.
question is another serious one. When a young person approaches you and says, Lee, man, I'm thinking that maybe I'm a poet guy. I don't know. It seems like a road that doesn't lead anywhere, and who pays attention? And is it something that I should do? Is poetry worth it? Let me ask.
Yes, I think so. I mean, obviously, all us being poets, we all know, unless you're Robert Frost, poetry doesn't pay. I mean, and you could
I
write.
got to do it for the money, man. Come on.
I mean, we all got books, great, but they're not flying off the shelves. I have to admit that. I have a new book, and it's not flying. It's never going to be win a Pulitzer Prize. There are some poets, yeah, there are, but most of us, I think we do it because we discover that we can, and we're good at it, or we may not be good at the beginning, but the more you do it, the better you get. And I would tell that young person, don't give up. Keep writing, go to open mics, either live or or on Zoom, if you can find them. And especially, get into a workshop group if you can do that, because that way people will judge your poetry and help you, fix it or, edit it. And that makes you a much better poet. And I've credited, like I said, my Tin Box friends and even people on Zoom. And, you and I have never met personally, but you probably said something that stuck with me, and I've used that to my advantage. And that's what's so great about this community. And the pandemic, I got to wrap this up, but I think that globally, that brought the poetry community even closer. I have met so many amazing people, on just to be sitting in this giant screen with a bunch of squares. It is unbelievable, at what's out there and what people are doing. And I got to applaud everybody. I mean, I met people from Singapore. I met a 17-year-old kid who's a refugee in Malawi, who's even better. I mean, just his circumstances, probably forced him, but he is probably a better poet than I'll ever be, in his situation, which is unfortunate. But it's just, it's great. It really is great. So stick with it. The payoff may be small, but in the long run, it is worth it, I think.
Absolutely. Well, now we come to the fun part.
Okay.
This is where I say, Lee, my friend, go for it. You got 30 minutes. Knock it out of the park. Have fun. Read the ones you don't get a chance to read. Read whatever you'd like to read.
Okay. I will do that. And Richard, thank you. And I don't know if the phone is ringing on your end, but
no.
Okay. So it's in the other room. So I'm going to read. This is an older piece, and it's more of a prose poem. Hold it up here. I'll start it off because it's very appropriate, and it's called "Letter from London," or what I did on my summer vacation. Sunday, 29 July, 2012. Hello from London, everyone. I got here 2 weeks ago and on Friday marched in the opening ceremonies with the rest of the United States Olympic poetry team. It was awesome. We yelled so loud, both the Queen and Michelle Obama waved to us. My friend Levi Romero, he carried our flag. He's the first ever poet from New Mexico to be flag guy. We elected Thomas Lux as captain, and I qualified for the men's 6 by 400 meter free verse, the 200 meter open mic, mixed team speed reading, and the marathon. I think we'll win gold, but Ireland is the favorite in the 6 by 400. Iceland and Great Britain are favored too. South Korea, they got caught plagiarizing or disqualified. I almost got injured yesterday when a poet from Team Vanuatu nailed me in the stomach during the speed reading qualifiers. She apologized because it was raining and she slipped and dropped the mic. Don't worry though, I'm okay. I talked to her after and we become friends. And guess what? I've been invited to feature at the open mic she hosts at a bar in Port Vila after the games. The Athletes Village rocks, and yeah, it's true. Everyone tries to hook up to make poetry. We have a few days break next week, and we're invited to a bunch of open mics around town before the marathon and closing ceremonies. After that, we're going to the annual Slam and Sauna Poetry Festival in Helsinki. Then I'm off to Vanuatu and home. The weather here is brilliant, and the food is wicked awesome. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Tuesday night, we went to a private open mic with Prince Harry. You should have seen him. He got on stage and he read one of my poems. It was friggin' nuts. Everyone went insane. Then he bought me beers and we both got hammered. He gave me his phone number and said, Lee Dog, called me Lee Dog, I definitely want to come and hang out with you in Swampscott, Mass. Dude, I want to read more poems. I miss you all and look for me on TV. But if I win a medal, I'm not going on that stupid Today Show. Hey, we just won gold in the women's 500-meter haiku. I gotta go now. USA, USA. Your 2012 Olympic poetry team athlete poet, Lee. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing. How perfectly apt.
It was. It was. It would have been cool to float down the river yesterday in the rain in Paris. But all right. Okay. This is a piece. It's a bit longer, and I wrote this last year. I'm a school crossing guard in my town, and there's a lot of poems from that too.
Cool.
Or there will be if there are, but there's a few. So this is one. This is a longer piece. It's 3 parts, and I've read this a few times, and I think you said to read it, so we'll do it today. It's called The Road, Part 1. Excuse me. Start again here. The Road, Part 1. A few days early, hard-hatted men arrive. The crew, saw men, curb-cutting men. They mark and grid areas of removal. Saw the project's boundary lines, cut out curbs, paint out dig-safe lines, white, orange, pink, a broken kaleidoscope scattered across ragged roadway. A few days later, Leviathan arrives, a slow, rhythmic rumble, machine gun rattle of iron-heavy tractor tread across pot-marked pavement. A beast, the Road Tech RX-700E/EX milling machine carves, devours, crushes pavement, flings it from forward-facing conveyor belt boom arm into the empty receptacles of a bevy of bright red dump trucks. Dwarfed by the great dreadnought, the vacuum, water spray, and road roller assembles. The cleanup crew suck, spray, and flatten debris, dust, and dirt. Collect leftover bits of slag, gravel, and chat. Discretion signage unfurls. Pylons appear. Bright orange, they signal danger. Drive with caution. Avoid at all costs. Raised sewer casements, their painted pink manholes cover a foresight toward the end. Their painted pink manhole covers a foresight toward the unawares axle, seek to avert breakage. Part 2. A week later, paving day. Many moving parts arrive. Vacuum cleaner, water sprayer, pitch spreader. Flitting about like an iron butterfly, the mini front loader zigzags about, readying the main event. Water reduces dust. Pitch spreader sprays its ink, black, sticky, oily odor of brimstone onto the naked roadbed, soon to be freshly smoothed blacktop. An array of dump trucks arrive, overflowing with hot asphalt mix, the hot tar far hotter than the early summer sun, sizzles, crackles, and glistens. The immediate ground zero temperature noticeably increases, as noted by the bounteous sweat beating the brawny faces of the work crew. The Ingersoll Rand/Blah Knox PF 4410 asphalt spreader paver arrives, copiously fed by its dump truck wet nurses. The heated screed deposits, spreads, paves, even black ribbons of black hot blacktop across sticky black pitch blend. A deep black odor of hell, wisps of steam ascends like angels to reflect tiny rainbows of white morning sun. Road rollers smooth and polish. Foot soldiers fill divots, corners, and those hard-to-reach angles of newly minted macadam. The crew retreats, engage the next street. Black onyx sparkles in morning heat. 3. Several weeks afterward, freshly painted canary yellow divider lines, creamy white Jacob's Ladder crosswalks accentuate my completed street. Thank you.
Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah. I was told that the little kids might like that. And it's very Richard Scarry, the guy that wrote about, cars, trucks for kids. And so I got a kick out of it.
Very nice.
And that was one of the ones I think that, is this a kid's poem? Is this an adult poem? No, but
we've all walked on crosswalks. Many of us were crossing guards.
Yeah, you got to write it down. All right, so I'm going to do one. This is a shorter piece.
Okay.
One of my good friends who is a member of our Tin Box Poets of Swampscott, Melissa Van Narvis, she sadly passed away. It'll be a year this past August. And in September, we did a reading in memory of her in Salem, Mass, where a bunch of us read her poetry. And we're currently in the process, my group is currently in the process of editing a book of her poems. And her husband, Chris, is helping us out do that. And we think it's going to be really good. And this will be in memory of her. So after we did this reading in September, I came away with this. And the reading was at a tea place, a tea restaurant called the Jolly Tea Company. And so there's going to be reference to tea in here. And I came away with this after the reading. It's called Networks. I'm telling you this because you tapped me on the shoulder and implored, yes, it's beautiful. Write it down on paper. In the blue hour, you and I converge on this wavelength, this inner array in which germinate the surface tensions of bubbles, mycelium networks, string theories, a poetry of rivers, the cosmic lamppost, a pride of lions, pedestrian bridges over paradise crisscross the miracle miles, while the trumpets of Andromeda court the faithful with their spellbinding chocolate fanfares of unity. We bask and contemplate in these late summer photons. The scattering remnants of our breathing time are way more than you and I will ever know. Way more than these simple hors d'oeuvres of salmon and cucumber tea sandwiches. More than the blend of chamomile, bergamot, and lavender. More than the laughter of friendship, and more than this bounty of ink written on this sheet of once white paper. It is a kindred spirit, one in which we laze upon overstuffed couches, sipping from silver goblets, those Bombay sapphire gin dirty martinis you love so much. Ego coque pulvis, I am also dust. It's late September. Outside my window, a blue jay perches upon a bare tree branch. Your shadow will always be. Thanks.
Very nice.
Thank you.
A lovely tribute.
Thank
Lovely.
you. Thank you. Can I be rude? Can I swear?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Listen, you'll never hear me censor a poet.
Okay. So I'm gonna read. So I was this book dates from, when is the date? Gotta find it. 2016. This is called Madmen of Lynn. Sadly, it's out of print. I was fortunate enough. This is myself and one, two, three, four other poets from the North Shore of Boston area. This is we all met. We all knew each other, but we used to read at the Walnut Street Cafe in Lynn, which is a great place. They hold weekly open mics and very welcoming, from new poets to old poets. Anybody that's new, you should go there. I featured there many times, read there for years. So my late friend, Blaine Hebel, he was a poet from Ipswich, Massachusetts. And he was another political poet, great poet. But he put this book together of all of us, and we each have 10 poems in there. So, and I was, very fortunate, and I consider all these guys my friends. There was a sister book called The Wild Women of Lynn as well, which has some great poets from the Lynn North Shore area as well. So this piece does swear.
Perfectly fine.
Okay, and the epigraph is attributed to Hart Crane from his friend, the writer Catherine Ann Porter. But we don't know if he actually said this or wrote this, but why not? So I'll read the epigraph. Fuck the moon and fuck its light. Fuck the heliotrope, the heaven tree, the sweet by night. Fuck too the air we breathe, the pool, the sedge. Fuck too the two small ducks there huddled at its edge. A rant against bad poetry after Hart Crane's. Fuck those boring poems, the candy floss, crunchy coated flowers in the dell. Fuck the lovely nature poems, sweep them all to hell. Fuck too those trite poems, the sugar verse of lambs, sing-along sunsets, lovey-dovey doe-eyed. These two you can cram. Puke the fey, the innocent, the waif, dull and drab. Eat the spicy, fatty, umami poems, the ones that you can grab. And finally, fuck the every poems, those la-di-das that rhyme. Serve me up a hearty verse so I can think before I die.
Nice.
Thank you. So, I go against my own grain. So they don't, and my friend Tony Toledo, he's a storyteller from Beverly, Mass, and he hosted the First Friday open mic for the longest time, stopped about 6 years ago, retired. He, in 2011, he anointed me the Renegade Poet Laureate of Swampscott, Mass, and I will be that until forever because I just don't care. And as I said before, I will not censor myself. So, and that just proves it. So, gotta blow my own horn.
Good. Why not?
Yeah. So I'll do a short one, then I'll do another longer one.
Okay.
Let's see. I haven't done this one in a while. This is called Mortal. If I died today, would anyone care? a time-stained memento, yellow and frayed, crumpled up and tossed into a junk drawer of old memories, set free and forgotten.
Nice.
Thank you. All right. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Oh, okay. So this is a long one. This is, how much time do I have?
You've got about 15 more minutes.
Okay, I'm going to do this and then maybe we'll do a couple more. This is a long piece. You said to read some long ones.
Yeah.
I read this a couple weeks ago, and I don't read it very often because it takes about 7 minutes. This is based on a real experience that happened to me, but it's obviously been poetically embellished.
Now you had your poetic license.
Like we all do. The title is in Latin, and the epigraph is from a novel that I read a number of years ago. This poem actually dates from 2012. So the epigraph is from a novel called The Gospel of Anarchy by a guy named Justin Taylor. Desire is a strange attractor. Your longing warps the arc of the world's emergent truth. I'm going to take a drink first.
Go for it.
This is called Deus Ex Machina Fiat Poeta. Part 1. Flitting from flower to flower, the hummingbird savors the sweet nectar from his collected cache of blooms on this early October Saturday, the final day of the library's annual book sale. Big-boned, sporting glasses, his chatterbox chirp flame throws about the room, setting a sunderous blaze. I own a used bookstore. This will be fantastic fodder for future resale. Hardly a heedful glance as other perceptive patrons mill and swarm as vivid worker bees. They too brandish biblio bounties. A large clutch of books secured beneath a hairy fat wing. Hummingbird becomes raptor. Alights beside the table marked Russian Lit and Mags. Oh, can I have that box? I really need a box for my books. I read that bags and boxes are free. I really need that box for my books. Belittled by his largesse, the diminutive sales lady, busily unpacking and arranging remaining titles, is not to be taken lightly, as her aria announces. Let me check, please. I think we need all the boxes for breakdown and storage. One moment, I'll be right back. Her tone bristles in that friendly, but don't cross me, buddy, gray zone, somewhere between I love you and pure rage. Ignoring her utterance, he empties the box and puts his own stash inside. The newspaper says all bags and boxes are free. His abruptness lingers as others eye askance and warily take note. He moves to another table. She returns. I'm very sorry, but as I said, you can't have the box. Our website noted specifically, we suggest shoppers bring boxes or bags to carry home their purchases. Friends of the Swampscott Library tote bags are available for a $5 donation. But I drove all the way up here from Hingham. I read bags and boxes are free. I need a box. His defiant protests ping-pong and plummet. He sulks, shuffles, stamps and pouts. I need a free box. Free box. Free box. Free box. This repeats, repeats, repeats like a skull drilling car alarm at 4 a.m. Sunday. He grumbles a few choice remarks. You should, grr. How can I, grr? Old cow. She's surprised, tongue-tied, mortified, glued to the floor, demeaned and shaken. Part 2 gets better. Unnoticed until now, standing behind this large lout, the man wearing a black leather motorcycle jacket occupies his eyesight over the spines of the colorful fiction section. He fingers his final quarter in the hope of persuading the perfect publication to pounce off the shelf directly into his grateful hands. No luck today. A plethora of instant airport gratifications, kissy-faced chicklet, dregs of dime a dozen buy me now back bestsellers. The overbearing eruption of cacophonous cackle blinks him back from bad book hell. Who is that obnoxious oaf oppressing that whimpering woman and interrupting my bibliophilic browsing? Good God, shut up. He turns, a wild-eyed boy bent on blissfulness. Excuse me, do you mind? You're quelling the quietude. Did you hear what she said? This is not a Neiman Marcus. This is a book bazaar, a yard sale, a fundraiser. She's a volunteer. She doesn't work here, doesn't get paid, just free cups of cold coffee, chocolate crullers, or tepid tap water. There's no customer service. You're on your own. Carry in, carry out, carry on. If you don't like it, there's the door. Flummoxed and flustered, Boxman stops and stares, stunned, slovenly spewing sparse riposte. Who the hell are you? Who am I? Who am I? I am suffering. The slings and arrows of pessimism so deep it grinds the very gears of progress. It seizes the throat and chokes the juices from all the apples on all the trees. Their sweetness ferments to vinegar. I am the struggle of ink, the colostrum you drink, the quintessence of words, chaotic, dialectic, undeniable pain and passion. I am a mystagogue. I create our machine, the brow-beaten sweat and toil of pages and pages of lyric and phrase. I am poet. He breathes his dragon's breath of torporous fuel fire into Boxman's faith and reduces him to rubble. Gasped, glassy-eyed and grimacing, Boxman falters, adjusts his hair and glasses, glimpses about at the sudden, startled silence that pervades the puzzled patrons, staring stone-faced. Some surreptitiously squint at cell phones or check their watches, though their keen eyes twist to the obvious as they mind my own business. Yet, when presented with the car crash opera, they can't help but slow down to look. Feebleish, the former hummingbird turned raptor, turned Boxman, turned obnoxious oaf, turned on his ass, quickly turns out his books, grabs them up, and drops the box. He pushes a wad of cash into whoever's hand is free. I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I was wrong. He wails and blubbers as he bolts towards the exits and out into the great, wide universe.
Bravo, bravo.
Oh,
Wonderful.
yeah,
Wonderful.
thank you. I have one more, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Right.
That's fine.
So I need to plug this.
Please.
Some of you may have been published by this gentleman. Sourav Sakar is a poet in India who runs an imprint called Kuch Behar Books. And he puts out all of these different anthologies on various themes and whatnot. And I've been honored to have been in several of them. And they're all fun little chapbooks. They're available on Amazon. And I think, Richard, you may have been in one or two, I think.
Sure.
Couple months ago, he texted me, Lee, send me 10 poems. So this is my latest chapbook. It's a split with Sourav. And Sourav is doing other chapbooks with other poets from all around the globe. He has poets from Vietnam to Serbia to America to England and God knows. So this book, I got to plug it. It is available on Amazon. Just search Sourav Sakar and Lee Eric Freedman. Or if you want to contact me, I can send you one and sign it. So I'm going to end with this. I've been reading this one a lot lately. This is one of my favorite pieces. It does refer to Hart Crane, who I mentioned before. It refers to a poem of his called Sunday Morning Apples, which he wrote in honor of an artist called William Summers, who was an artist from Ohio. And this references that a painting called Sunday Morning, actually Hart's poem called Sunday Morning Apples, which I also believe is Summers' painting that Hart was influenced by. This is called Fura Poeticus. And I want to thank you, Richard, for having me on today. This has been a blast. I really love it. I love question and answers. I love talking about my poetry as well as sharing it.
Absolutely.
And thank you.
My pleasure, sir.
Okay. So we'll end with this. Fura Poeticus. I want to write something beautiful today. Something everlasting, profound, that will create a revolution. But I can't think. It's beyond my grasp. My words die on the vine because the house is cold, so cold. Not a must turn up the furnace cold, but a leaves one helpless, damp autumn cold that seeps underneath the door at midnight's seasons change. The very cusp of hot, the very brink of cold, sort of somewhere in between, an ebb tide of temperature. So I take a walk instead, ramble toward the breezy beach. It's low tide, and scattered among the green and brown seaweed slathered rocks, several gulls squabble amongst themselves, while other birds stand idly as if waiting for me to recite my important oration. Do anything but let it produce joy. Do anything but let it yield ecstasy. But I can't recite this because Henry Miller already wrote this, and that would be claiming credit for something that isn't mine. So I sit, dumbstruck, stuck in my private lock groove, where dismal grasses and knobby weeds flail in their struggle to gain footholds amongst the jagged cracks, crags, and divots of the crackled rock face. As quick as a comet, there you are, my beauty star. You're my best friend, confidant, bohemian lover. We steal that car over there and steal away to summer nights that sing the blues, greens, and reds of silken twilights. We chase our promises, chase our pipe dreams, driving south in an open-top phantom black T-bird, driving away from this hapless chill, this mist of tears, this demon night. Our highway leads southwest, our New Mexican dream, where all roads lead to Pie Town, on the Great Divide, a million miles from Monday. Our road ends at El Rey Cafe, serving black gold and Balaton cherry, blazing star peach, lofty lemon meringue, New Mexico old apple. The apples, Bill, the apples. I laugh at you and laugh at Hart Crane, his double slice of green apple pie, a la mode, vanilla, chocolate, or heated with melted cheddar cheese. The cinnamon crusts stick to your lips. You're my sweet, sweet apple pie. But it's torn asunder, smoke and mirrors, secrets revealed, the tithing man's last hurrah. Golden photons fade to chilly New England autumn day. And here I sit, a lonely renegade, an old gray wolf staring at white pages, waiting, waiting, always waiting for my mammoth poetic frenzy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lee. This was awesome. A real pleasure and honor to have you with us.
Thank you, Richard.
Ladies and gentlemen, Lee Eric Freedman, poet extraordinaire and producer. Lee, I thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you. Have a great day, everyone.
You too, buddy. Bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome the incredible Dre, a poet extraordinaire, a man who's not only a poet, but also a poet producer who helps other poets get their work out. And he's known, from coast to coast and beyond as a poet of some capacity. Dre, welcome, sir.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for having me, Richard. It's been it's a delight.
Well, thank you. I call this Poets of the East, and I'll tell you why. I don't really care what direction you're coming from, but to me, every time a poet speaks, the sun comes out. And wherever there is sun, wherever there is light, that's the East for me. So welcome to Poets from the East. So first, I've got some questions I'd like to run by you. Let me ask you first, when did you start writing?
Oh, geez. When did I start writing? I felt like it was just like an on and off thing throughout my teens, and then it kind of picked up a bit, I would say, in my early 20s. And I would say at the age of 21, I was writing more actively and then I did that for a couple years, and then I took maybe like a roughly 8-year hiatus due to other things going on in life, work and whatnot. And this last summer, I got back into it, and I've kept myself busy with not just the writing process, but also providing space for other performers to get their word out.
That to me is a sign of a special kind of artist, because people think the average artist impulse is me. Let me show you my stuff. Let me tell you my story. And to me, it's a special kind of person that says, I have my creativity, but I also want to make space for other people, to help other people get their word out. And that to me, that's a special thing. And that's just one of the reasons why I asked you to come on. I try to have and show respect for people who go that extra mile, who aren't just great writers themselves, but have that special humanity that says, I want to help you get your word out too. So that's a couple of the reasons I like to have people on. Okay, What writers, authors, lyricists made an early impression on you?
Early influences. Um, I feel like I was geared more towards the music side of things early on. Uh, Having a father who was born in '54, so tell me, about the artists of the '60s and '70s, getting a good grasp at some of the writing styles of, let's say, Bob Dylan, and just being able to kind of get myself geared in like the in that folk rebel sound, and then just kind of branch from there, and then just listening to the sounds of Hendrix, and kind of went from there. Um, as far as authors and poets of the sword, I feel like as of now, I feel impacted by the works of C.P. Mays, the late Gustav Solace, hell of a writer, hell of a performer. Um, and I feel also impacted by the works of Alma Garcia, and of and an array of talent that seeps their way into the shows provided by Open Minds, Open Mic.
Okay. Another question is when, I think there's a kind of a center of balance shift that goes from, well, I'm a dabbler. I write from now and then, to when you really say, I'm a writer. And when you got that switch, when you got that, if you really felt it that way, were there now writers that you look to for inspiration, for guidance, or was it just sort of part of that old general wash?
Uh, I could say that in my 20s, I just tried to be a student of the game. I would frequent open mics weekly, episodically, and just try to get bits of inspiration, not from everything from performance to content to to wordplay to the way that themes can be played along. And now I'm like at a point where I just want to experiment and kind of push the boundaries a bit. Um,
Cool, cool.
so it's been fun, definitely. I would say definitely someone who pointed me in that direction was the Megas, definitely.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. When did you start actually performing poetry as opposed to writing poetry?
I would say 2012. I remember I remember distinctively this really fun time going to this place called I believe it was the Coffee Grounds in Derry, New Hampshire. And I remember hearing things about Derry, Dirty Derry, and how it has some kind of like a reputation. And it was just funny how it kind of lived up to that, because the first, like as soon as my friend and I kind of crossed into the town border, we looked towards our right, and there was a vehicle on fire at a car dealership that was
Oh,
being
wow.
tended to. And I was just, wow, welcome to Derry, I guess. So, but I remember going in there, and it was into the coffee grounds, and it was a nice vibe. It was comforting. Um, I wasn't nervous at all, because prior to performing poetry, I have dabbled into wrestling, and not just like backyard stuff. I mean, talking about performing in front of crowds, semi-professionally. I started that when I was 17.
Wow.
Um, so it kind of cut off the jitters of performing in front of a crowd in a different vibe, in a literary aspect, as opposed to like combat theater.
Sure.
uh,
Sure. I did sound and lighting for some wrestling for some time, in my sound production days, and the theatricality was such that I said to these guys. Now this was back in the mid '80s, mid to late '80s. I said to these guys, You know what you need? You need lasers and flashbots, and and eventually they did go in that direction. So yeah, I totally get it. Yeah, no one's gonna throw a chair at you reciting poetry, probably.
No, I hope not.
Okay, I've lost a few mics that way. Uh, okay, are there themes or topics that you find yourself addressing regularly?
I tried to branch out a bit. I felt like there were times where I was dealing either with love or rejection because those were very two familiar things, like the idea of, like, I guess infatuation and rejection. But then I kind of wanted to just try to break from that path, and I found myself writing some fascinating things, just food poems, I guess you could call them. Just being able to write about food in a very, I don't know, unique way.
I think I think I've
Comical.
heard at least one of your food poems. Very nicely done.
Yeah, and I've also done persona poems. I I kind of dabbled in this experimental thing where I would have the perspective of a character from a 1990s cartoon show or some pop show at the time,
Interesting.
writing to another character. And so that's where I kind of got. I wrote like a couple of those. That was a fun thing. I need to get back into at some point. But another persona themed bit I've done was incorporating the mindset of known wrestlers and trying to inflect that into poetry, trying to have like
Interesting.
a mishmash, because I definitely see the similarities of pro wrestling when people are cutting promos on a wrestling show and people performing on, let's say, like a poetry slam or on an open mic, and it's very theatrical. It's, it gets you going, and it does create some interesting creative pathways, uh kind of, some playful what ifs, like what if Hulk Hogan was a decent human being, for
Ah, ha,
example.
ha. Wow, that's really imaginative. Ha, ha, ha.
So,
Okay, let me ask you another one. There's different processes for different poets. Some practice what I would call rigorous scheduled writing, whether they write every day or every week. And then others wait instead for inspiration and are inspiration driven. Do you see yourself as an inspiration driven poet or a poet who practices regularly just for the sake of practicing?
I definitely write when I am inspired. It just comes to me, and then if I have the time to either jot down a note or just have the time to just start delving into the matter, I'll delve into the matter. Uh, it's it's something I don't want to rush or, force. Looking back at poetry and when I was in my early 20s, I try to do the like, I guess you could say, like a lot of writing. So there was like a lot of bulk, but there was just not enough content, I would say, not enough concrete content looking back at things. But I've been able to flush some pieces out and just rework them in ways.
I really like the way you've gone in some very unusual directions, writing from the voice of a wrestler or writing from the voice of a cartoon character. I think that's really inventive. But I have another question related to that. Do you write social commentary poetry or do you kind of stay away from topical because it has short shelf life?
Oh, I'm not afraid to delve into matters. There've been a couple pieces where I kind of reflect on, like, being a minority in New Hampshire. It's Yeah, it's there's some things I discuss in there, and it's just a little bit weird. Like, for example, because I was in a Spanish speaking home in elementary school, they had me in a special reading class. However, I excelled in language arts. So it was just kind of like a waste of time for me looking back, and also weird racial profiling. Um, but that's Manchester, New Hampshire in the late '90s for you.
I had I was living in Miami, which is a wonderful polyglot area. There are so many different cultures there, even so many different Latin cultures, whether it be Central American or South American or Cuban American or Mexican American. They're all there. And then you've got your New Yorkers and your Midwesterners. It's a marvelous, marvelous melting pot. But I went from there. I was hired to do some multimedia production up in Maine, and I was really kind of going through a culture shock because everyone I saw was white, and it just sort of it looked, I mean, for a guy who lived in Miami for almost 50 years, it looked fucking weird, you know. And as I'm thinking about this, I'm driving in the car going to the office where I was about to do some consulting, and I heard an NPR story about how Maine is something that has like 1% minorities. I mean, boy, that's for sure. And of course, this was, a good 10 years ago, so it may be a little better now. But I thought, man, I absolutely saw that. Okay, next question, sir. Um, do you feel that poets or writers in general have a responsibility to address contemporary social issues?
Oh yeah. There needs to be a voice of the voiceless, and there's a lot of people on mute. You don't really see. I mean, you kind of you start seeing bits and cracks in social media, but as far as in like mainstream culture, you don't really delve as deep as you get to see at open mics. And I feel that what we do as writers, as poets, as performance artists, as spoken word artists, it's crucial to have a backbone in society, and this is where we come in and we just lay it down straight. So in ways that are consumable, understandable, relatable, and and the fun thing is that everybody has a different way of saying the same thing, so it's just a matter of paying attention and seeing what connects. Um, and that's truly an art to be able to relay truth in different ways, in digestible ways. And it could be funny, it could be sad. As long as it's able to connect, boom, you're good.
Yeah, that raises another question. Um, a lot of times people will devalue poetry because they think of it as June Moon soon, rhymey nonsense that has no relationship to the real world. And I feel very differently. I agree with you that it's important, or at least it's valid for a poet to address societal issues. Um, I had a funny experience. I was cutting my teeth in performance art during the Vietnam War era, and I was writing vibrant anti-war material and proclaiming it, performing it out in public. And besides being, they called us communists, man, because we didn't support the war. But I had a friend pull me aside and say, Richard, listen, you're a passionate writer, but you shouldn't rhyme. I mean, it's just not done. Serious poets don't rhyme. And my response was, uh, if my muse says rhyme, I'm not going to argue. I don't care whether it's fashionable or not. And you strike me as the same sort of person or the same sort of writer, where you're going to address what you want to address. Fashion be damned, the typical thing. Who cares? Which leads me to another question. Setting aside the nursery rhyme for a second, is narrative, in other words, is a coherent storyline important in poetry?
I would say so, even in the most, at first, nonsensical things, because there's always um, a revisit to be able to kind of redigest things. And that's like the cool thing about when you're able to record things or have things written down and you purchase someone's work, you're able to revisit, redigest. With narratives, I just feel that it is important to be able to guide the audience from point A to point B. Otherwise, you may risk losing the audience and losing the destination. Then you have like this weird journey. You don't want it to be bogus, but it's just trying to provide that excellent adventure from point A to point B. In some cases, it can be rough. It can be a little bit hard to accomplish, but that's what the revision game is about.
My last question, sir. If a young person came up to you and said, I write from time to time. I'm not sure if I really want to commit to being a poet. I mean, is it worthwhile? What is your answer to it? Is poetry important? Is poetry worthwhile?
Oh, it's definitely worthwhile. I feel like when you first see depictions of like, journal entries or diary entries on television, that's like the birthplace of a poet right there. It's just a matter of being able to translate those feelings, those raw feelings, into something um in your eyes and others' eyes, art. And I feel that everybody deserves, well, not deserves, everybody uh, owes it to themselves to be able to reflect. And I feel that that's something that that needs to be pushed more in society. Self-reflection, because there's a lot of people, a lot of confused people, a lot of angry people who see themselves making the same mistakes or aren't understanding someone else's perspective. And I've been on that side of the road where I wasn't sure of how I was negatively affecting certain people. It's just a matter for, to take that time and effort to reflect, to see things in different perspectives, and what you come out of it, that's, it could be just as simple as like life lessons, or just into poetry, and then from the poetry you could create life lessons that could be shared with other people who could take that and maybe utilize that, prevent themselves from making similar mistakes or whatnot.
Well, thank you, sir. Now the fun part. Sir, I would like to invite you to share some of your poetry, and feel free to stretch out. You got 20 minutes, knock us dead, man.
Oh,
Take out some of the long ones you don't generally get a chance to read in the normal, 3 minute sort of window if you like. But whatever you'd like to offer, please, sir, the mic is all yours.
all right. Let's start with this one. I've been trying to rework this. Be nice way to start things off. It's called Pipe Bomb. Life is like professional wrestling. You may start off with a quick shine, but life is a way of cutting you off, pouring the heat on you while you try to fire back up, constantly in a seesaw battle of spiritual momentum. Life is the greatest act of improv we know. I put on act everywhere I go. After 12 years of wrestling in front of crowds, I've become an expert on working the crowd. My happy disposition is a false advertisement. I may look like I am made of oak, but inside I am a swamp shrouded by weeping willows. With every breath I take, I exhale an apocalypse. I may look like someone who has their shit together, but heaven knows I'm miserable now. If I had a dime for every time I put my heart on line and come up empty-handed, I would have a whole bunch of dimes. Enough dimes to furnish a mansion with, maybe. When it comes to falling short, I stand tall, dwarfing giants. Put me on a textbook, and a whole new generation can learn how to prevent themselves from making the same mistakes that made me the clown prince of childhood and adulthood through mass distribution to every elementary school. Isn't that noble, America? Do I have your attention now? I'm surprised my wallet hasn't pulled out a Glock on me and turned off the safety lock or bitch slapped me smart to stop me from making any more mistakes, because right now I cannot afford to make any more. There is so much more to life that hasn't been experienced yet, with so many chapters to be written, so many memories to be had. Therefore, I am compelled to endure the gauntlet and see what kind of mutation I become. If you're looking to get advice from me, please don't. Unless you're into spiritual sadism. Don't worry, I don't kink shame. I can relate. On second thought, maybe I can teach y'all a thing or two on how it's like to shut off your emotions after self-inflicted wounds to the spirit, what to do when your heart has been through enough malice that makes you emotionally callous, and most importantly, what to do and what not to do when coping with unrequited feelings, and how to properly dispose them. You will learn a lot from me. Maybe so much that I can be a professor with a PhD in emotional catastrophe. I can tour the world and give TED Talks, giving rave reviews and from audiences worldwide, establish enough income to seclude myself from society in record time, as if I was having a Kickstarter for loneliness. Yeah, that's the spirit. Let's exploit pain into profit, just like professional wrestling. Anyways, if this money-making scheme works, I don't have to spend 10 years working in a nonprofit job to erase my student loan debt. I just got to figure out a way to relay my hurt into healing and make it rain from a world of pain. Call me rainmaker of wisdom. I have laughed so hard in the face of adversity. I puked my brains out like a college jock fuckboy who couldn't handle their drink. I have done the gritty through the baptism of fire and did the worm with floors covered in the shattered glass of my broken dreams, loving every millisecond of the pain because it reminds me that I can bleed, I can feel, and if I can feel, I can heal. I have spat in the face of God while punching Satan in his stupid face and kicking Wolfman in the nards. I didn't go through the limbo line of Hell's Gate for fun. I came for the experience to remind me that to no good I had to go through a whole lot of bad, thinking at the end I would be gracious for the brief commercial breaks from life's dull programming I wish I could unsubscribe from. All this pain and trauma clearly affected more than my memory, perhaps the ability to read vibes because I am illiterate as fuck and I can't afford the higher education, perhaps the ability to feel pain and mistaking it for my pleasure. My current mindset reminds me way too much of Mick Foley after an extensive career of deathmatch wrestling. I'm beaten, barred, and scarred, beaten, battered, and scarred, but I will find a way to take more of a licking and keep on ticking and to say, have a nice day with a fake ass smile on my face. I'm used to that retail life. I know how to hide it all in. This shit ain't nothing to me, man. I have a mindset that rivals a Timex that goes harder than a excuse me, let me start that line over. I have a Timex mindset that goes harder than a diamond mine. It's the only way I know how to survive under any means necessary. Power to the people and power to the feeble. Somehow, some way, I'll overcome whatever pain that comes my way. I guess the point of all of this is a way to simply convey that this is not a cry for help. I don't want any pity, just harsh reality I need to embrace in the fashion of a mother towards a newborn. In conclusion, life is the strangest story we know. I'm not okay, but I'm trying. And lastly, I'm sorry. Poem.
Bravo, bravo.
So there's that
Awesome.
piece. Let
Awesome.
me pull up another one here. Let's have some fun. Give me one moment. Okay. I'll save that for last, but let me just pull up this one. All right, so here's one I like to call life in survival mode. Life is the ultimate simulation video game our parents pre-ordered without reading its contents. The minority in the United States pre-ordered DLC sucks. I would like a refund, but no refunds are issued when life is set on survival mode. This is what you do. Survive. Survive through trial and error. Learn what it is to thrive in a seemingly never-ending cycle. Even if the results are not desirable at first, survive. When there are no other options, just survive. As much as you try to survive and be the best version of yourself possible, there are always going to be those who view you as public enemy number one. There are always going to be those who refuse to look in the mirror, who deflect and overlook their flaws, painting them on your canvas, making you look like some kind of jackass. There are always going to be those who will instantly forget all the good you've put out, then villainize you and morally sentence you without trial at the first given opportunity, shining a big spotlight on a fallacy that the light's intensity has blinded them. There will be people who blindly purchase lies without reading the price tag nor the package contents, proceeding to make a mess regardless. Forgiveness is the first step towards salvation. Forgive them, for they do not know any better. Their instinct is to jump to conclusions. Shoot first, then don't ask questions, passing judgment like kidney stones. Pissing out processed pain like processed food. Research and investigation is not valued here. How do you think so many cold cases for murder in New Hampshire happened in the first place? Cases colder than the winters have been. Global warming is not to blame for the incompetency or perhaps corruption, but who knows? They both wear similar garments here. Nobody pitches any no-hitters or perfect games on this field. It is impossible to go throughout life without making mistakes. However, nobody should be casting any stones, for we are all sins looking for holiness. May the silence of their hypocrisy scream and echo in eternity. May the welts from their pelting reduce in swelling over time. May the scars from the wounds depict a story of survival. Survive and thrive out of spite. Control your narrative. It's the only one you get. Poem.
Bravo, sir. Bravo.
All right. Thank you. Let's see here. How much time do I have? Just want to just
You got
consider it.
15 minutes, easy.
Awesome. Okay. Let me just dig something out real quick from my Google Drive. Okay. So here's an older piece from 2012. And this is for anybody who's ever had to deal with the struggle of trying to turn on a video game for the older Nintendo systems. So this is called NES S&M. This cougar of a Nintendo Entertainment System hungers for something inside her. She wants something with the right game, something that clicks, something that fits just right. The gamer, the Nintendo's longtime partner, whips out a copy of Blaster Master and fills her insides raw. The gamer pressed on the Nintendo's clitoris, the power button. That's her turn on. In attempts to get things rolling. First attempt failed. Time for a little foreplay. A dry blowjob. A couple of spanks. Slide that bad boy back in. Second attempt failed. All right, Time to play dirty, which is ironic because we're trying to clean. Time to call forth the tiny, white, double-sided dildos dipped in rubbing alcohol. In the trenches you go, but just a tip. The Q-tip. Sticking it inside the cartridge, cleaning off the dust inside. This trick is a fail-safe. Third time's a charm. Blaster Master is inside her, impregnating the TV with nostalgia. Poem.
Very funny, very funny. Bravo, sir, bravo.
So I'm gonna do another older piece from 2012. Figured I'd start, I'd have this piece follow up with another piece that I wrote recently. So there's a fun little dichotomy. This is first like a heartbreak piece, and then the next piece is gonna be somewhat of a loving piece. Well,
Okay.
anyway, here it goes. This is called Killing the Dead Love. In his closet, he finds a large Ziploc bag full of old love and heartache. Like the memories, the bag was just occupying space. Like a squirrel scrounging around Elm Street for nuts while autumn softly caresses the air with a touch of coldness. He searches for the old shredder that was given to his dad a Christmas long ago. This was the first time he touched the love letters since the breakup. He takes one deep breath, plugs in the shredder, dumps the letters like alphabet soup across the futon sofa. Letter after letter, memory after memory, their fates meets by way of the shredder. Each letter was a morgue of the old love, a preserved body in each letter. The countless I love yous and I miss yous. The romance between these young lovers did not compare to the downward spiral that would soon follow. The high school sweethearts turned bittersweet. The buzz cutting of shredder through heartbreak hisses through the air. Roughly halfway into the task, the shredder encounters a jam. He unplugs the shredder, forks it, cleans up the jam, plugs it back in, and continues to mow his overgrown lawn of guilt. Old messages of after-school plans, high school semis, the prom, cute puppy love kisses him goodbye before they are reduced to shreds. When he finishes, he gathers the shreds inside an old Valentine's heart-shaped candy box and sets them all to flames. He watches the bodies of a dead love cremate slowly, ash to ash, dust to dust. Poem.
Beautiful, beautiful. Sad, poignant, but beautiful.
As opposed to that last one, that was about someone. This one, it's not geared towards anyone. I kind of challenged myself to write a love letter towards no one. So
Interesting.
yeah, I just kind of felt like I just had to get something out. So here's a piece that I like to call Untitled Love. Being with you gives me a warm, nostalgic feeling to a time when I was a more complete human being. A tender sense of familiarity looking into your eyes brings forth a swarm of dope butterflies that swell up my insides as I fly sky high all the way up to cloud 9. You're so sublime, so divine. You don't even know how fine of a dime you are. I want to gaze into your eyes under the moon and stars, getting lost, finding passion larger than the size of Mars that eclipse any and all scar tissue memory meteors with the potential of finding true love much easier. How dope would it be to see how it could be if we can agree to be a wee bit closer to a degree, to see what it could be if we could plant this seed and watch it turn to a solid oak tree, symbolizing our unity as we branch out to infinity. If I boldly entrust you with the key to my heart, that's me saying I'll love you beyond the point I depart from this realm. As long as we keep things heart to heart, our love has the potential to brush strokes of rainbow art on the canvas of the world around us and jumpstart a revolution in our hearts as we strive for state of the art love. Poem.
Very nice, sir. Very nice.
All right, thank you.
You want to
Um,
wrap up with one nice closer?
oh yeah, I got a closer for you. And I guess this has been a staple piece in whenever I have performed over the last year. And yeah, it's been a treat for anyone who has listened to it. Just give me one moment.
Certainly.
This is a piece I like to call Ode to Crab Rangoon. Oh, Crab Rangoon, you fill me up with fulfillment when you're filling face plants onto a field of my taste buds. Every time I have you inside my oral cavern, I cannot help but wants to crush you with my stalagmite teeth and swallow you into my abyss while I enjoy feeling you disintegrate slowly under my pressure as I slide you all the way down to the pit of my being. Oh, Crab Rangoon, you perfectly highly addictive, yet perfectly legal drug. And yes, I said drug. Have you ever eaten one and not feel dopamine and serotonin flood every mini vessel in your being with the utmost sense of culinary nirvana? Oh, Crab Rangoon, you are the Asian equivalent of Pringles. Once you pop, you can't stop. In life, there should be only two universal defining periods: life before and after accepting Crab Rangoon as your Lord, Savior, and demigod. Oh, Crab Rangoon, you miracle of life. If you were made in your original pure form, the pharmaceutical industry would cease to exist because you cure all. I'll never forget that one time I had that stomach ache, and you, with your crunchy exterior and your cheesy, creamy, crabby holiness. Oh, Crab Rangoon, you are the body of Christ. Your healing powers influenced me to start an underground street fighting club called Crab Rangoon Club. And let me tell you, the first rule of Crab Rangoon Club is that we definitely talk about Crab Rangoon Club. Oh, Crab Rangoon, the joy and despair of all, how they rewrote the history books. You, Crab Rangoon, every 80s power ballad and 70s adult film was inspired by you in some way by your rich, sexual white chocolate. Oh, Crab Rangoon, I am a goon for you, always have and always will. Poem. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Extraordinary, my friend. Extraordinary. Wow. That was powerful. That was very much effective. Very, very good. Dang, man. That was awesome. Very good. I want to thank you, Dre, so much for sharing your work with us, learning a little bit about you. It was, to me, just hearing poems written by poets, and even though it's so wonderful to hear it in their own voice, I always want to know more. I always want to know about the poet behind it. And this show, Poets of the East, is my way of learning a little something and getting a chance for a poet to have a little bit of a showcase. Thanks a
That's
lot.
really cool. Thank you for having me. And I just want to just quickly say again, I'm a representative of Open Minds Open Mic. You can find us on Instagram as Open Minds Open Mic. I think my screen name is showing at the bottom of this thing, right?
Yep.
So those are my Instagram handles. Dre Ray 90 is my personal, and I run a thing called the Slam Jam every Saturday at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard. We have a slam workshop and an open mic, so it's like a nice collision of a couple different performance worlds at once. So come
Well,
all,
thank you.
welcome all.
Thank you so very much, sir. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. You take care.
Take care. Thank you for having me.
Okay, buddy. Bye bye.
Bye bye.